Good morning, TransPodF and people of YouTube. My name is Chris, and this week we are going to be discussing the super problematic bathroom laws that were just passed in North Carolina and Mississippi, and I guess as many as 7 other states are currently considering similar bills to be passed against us, which is super terrifying. Thankfully, none in Michigan yet, but I wouldn't honestly be that surprised if that changes one day. But before I go too much further into the topic, I do feel it's really important for me to acknowledge my privilege in that being white, being male, and being cis passing, if you will, definitely puts me on top of the trans community in terms of privilege. And I know that because of that, this law affects me a lot less than it affects other people in the community. Um, I think this law was passed to target trans women because trans men and non binary people still don't have a lot of representation in the media at this time. And I think it was passed by terrified cis people whose entire knowledge of the trans community just goes down to men in dresses and drag queens. I'm sorry for even using that phrase. It feels disgusting to even say, but I think that's honestly what's going in the minds of these people that are making these laws. So, what can we do to fight back? I would definitely say the whole contacting your state representative, your senator, writing your governor if you live in a state that is doing these things would be a great way to start. If there's like a peaceful protest going on near you, that is also a good avenue. Um, Honestly, I'm probably going to spend the bulk of my video discussing what not to do. Really, this is more so directed at trans men than trans women. I'll briefly touch on trans women at the end of this, but I really want to focus on what not to do as a trans man to fight back with this. I don't, as you may already know, there's been a lot of pictures going around on social media of trans men who are already a ways into their transition, like myself, posting pictures of themselves in the women's restroom with captions like, "Are you sure you want me peeing next to your wife?" and stuff like that. And at first, I totally saw where they're coming from and agreed that is ridiculous because it is. But the more I thought about it, the more like not okay with it I am with those kind of pictures. Because for one, I think it kind of implies that, there's only one certain type of trans guy that's acceptable. Like these pictures are going out to people who have very limited knowledge of the trans community. So they may think that, oh, okay, to be a trans man, you have to be super masculine, you have to have been on hormones and have a beard, you have to be athletic and have muscles, and you just have to be hyper masculine to be like valid trans guy in their eyes. And it's not very representative and does erase like the trans guys that either choose not to go on hormones, the trans guys that are more feminine with their appearance or mannerisms or interests. Um, and it's super problematic for like non-binary folks as well. The second reason I have a problem with the whole trans guy taking pictures in the women's bathrooms is because I think it is a massive invasion of women's space in a world that is completely male dominated. There's very few spaces that are designed to be a woman's only space. I can think of three, two of which are basically the same thing. That is bathrooms and locker rooms slash changing rooms, and like there's the occasional like women's only gym. But even those I think are few and far between. Um, And so us taking pictures of ourselves as trans guys in a woman's locker room is doing just what the law is trying to prevent, which is men in the women's restroom. I know in their ignorant eyes, the men in their eyes is trans women, which is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I definitely think it is a not okay thing to do, and it's uncomfortable for both parties. It's uncomfortable for the trans guy, and it's uncomfortable for the women that are in a bathroom at the time. Um, I know there's also trans women that are doing the same thing. I really don't feel like as a man, I have a place to comment much on this. But just to throw my 2 cents out there, I definitely don't think it is nearly as problematic for trans women to be posting pictures in the men's bathroom because a woman invading a man's space is just a completely different thing than a man invading a woman's space, I feel like, you know, because let's face it, we live in a man's world still, we men are the ones who are getting paid more. They're the ones that don't have to deal with misogyny, with fearing going into the restroom, fearing walking down the street at night, fearing being catcalled and sexually harassed, nearly to the extent as women, especially trans women, have to face. So I definitely don't feel like it's really my place to comment on that is a debate that should be held within the trans women community of whether or not they think that is a good way to battle the whole bathroom bill thing. Um, yeah, it's definitely a very terrifying thing. I do admit that if a law like this was passed in Michigan, I would choose to still use the men's restroom because I don't think it's really feasible that they would have like a bathroom police or something checking your genitals or checking your birth certificate or something before you go in. So I know out of a huge place of privilege that I would not be affected by this bill, but I still want to do my part in fighting back because this does affect people that I do know and care about. Um, and it's just not right. So, yeah. That was pretty much my thoughts on the whole bathroom bill situation. Please let me know if you have any comments, suggestions, you agree, you disagree. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, I am going to sign off. So I hope you have a good week, and I will talk to you next week.